I'm gonna give you 50 essential music production terms in 15 minutes or less. I saw a guy named Pat do something similar to this. Then I saw a dude named Mike do it. And then I was like searching on YouTube, and I think Isaac Duarte was one of the earliest YouTubers that I could find that did something like this. But I'm assuming it's pretty common because people gotta share the information. By the way, hi, I'm Jamie Grace. I'm a self-produced artist, and I'm also the host of this show called The Audio, a podcast for women and girls who love to create. Now, guys, you're allowed to watch this video too. It's just, I'm not explaining anything today. 1, BPM/tempo. BPM stands for beats per minute. The tempo is kind of like the cadence of the song, if you will. When someone goes 1, 2, 3, 4, they're letting you know what the tempo of the song is going to be. When you open your DAW, most of the time it's set to 120. A lot of times you might find people wanting to do some lo-fi in 90. It's just really cool vibes, you know, what helps you pick out the tempo. Plugin, something that you can spend a bunch of money on, and you don't always need to spend a bunch of money on, but it's basically like all these things you can download and put inside of your DAW to like make your music sound fancy or not so fancy or whatever. To mansplain it, it's like an outfit and then adding accessories. 3, VST, virtual instrument. I don't really think that's what it stands for, but I have a lot of VSTs. I have like a keyboard, a banjo, and then I can make these notes and sounds sound like banjos and keyboards in my computer, even if I didn't actually play a banjo or a keyboard. Compression, that is when you compress the sound to take all the other stuff out. It always confuses me, but I know for a fact that if I record a vocal, especially in like an open and airy room, and then I add compression to it, I go, okay. EQ, that's adjusting the bass, the treble, all the stuff that equalizer, EQ, the way that the sound is. Reverb, best explained by listening to my song Reverb by Jamie Grace, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, all that stuff. Reverb is the echo effect, essentially. You can add more, take it away, you can do stuff. Delay. Distortion is basically like the stuff that you put on guitars and like make it really crunchy. I like to use the concept of crunchy or just like, and that's basically distortion. You can get plugins that are distortion plugins, compression plugins, EQ, reverb. The plugins do all that stuff. Stock, that means like a stock plugin is something that came with the DAW, came with Logic, came with Ableton, came with Pro Tools. You didn't have to pay extra or go somewhere and download the plugin. It came with the software. Engineer, that's the person that is at the computer doing all the stuff. Producer, that's the person that's creating the sounds and making the music happen. I myself am both an engineer and a producer. I think I'm stronger on the producer side. And then there are some producers that don't engineer at all. There's some engineers that don't produce at all. A lot of people are both. The next word is click or metronome. Metronomes are incredibly important. This is the very first one that my grandfather bought me when I was 14 years old, and he wanted me to know the importance of getting really familiar with a click. That irritating sound, it's so important. Websites, apps, or a physical metronome like I just showed you, there's so many different options out there. Set the number you want, the BPM, and then that sound is the click. Up next is halftime. I have no shame in saying that you should definitely go listen to my song Different. The entire chorus is a halftime, so it's, I was made to be a little different, not ordinary. I don't fit in with everybody. The next one will be double time. If instead of going into halftime, my song would have been, I was made to be a little different, not ordinary, and it would have gone into double time. Some people call those praise breaks. I really like when tempos change, when the click changes. I think it's a really cool moment in the song because change can be absolutely phenomenal. You might have even noticed that I have changed rooms. I have changed shirts. I think, I don't even remember what I was wearing in the last part of this video. It's a different day and I'm in a different room. This is the second room in my studio that I'm building out in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm so excited about the studio and can't wait to be able to invite you guys to record, produce your own music, learn how to do stuff, whatever it might be. So if you like what I'm doing here, if you like the music that I'm making, the visuals of the studio, please join me on Patreon because it's through your support on Patreon that I'm able to create, produce, and share what I'm learning and what I have learned with you all. Clipping is when your microphone is way too loud in the input and you get in the yellows and the reds of like the visual and it starts to sound like muffled and like it's actually clipping out of the sound wave, and that's not a good thing. An input is what's going in, an output is what's going out. An interface is the device that is often used to take the microphone to the computer. Unless you're using a USB microphone that plugs directly into the computer, you're going to need an interface to be able to record your microphone. Most interfaces have 1 or 2 inputs to start with, and then a few outputs as well. I currently use one with 2 inputs, and hopefully we'll be soon upgrading to one with 8 inputs. As you can see, maybe possibly my drum set came out of storage and we gotta move up a little bit. There are 3 different types of cables that are used in many different settings, but specifically with interfaces: Firewire, Thunderbolt, and USB. They look differently, but they can serve a similar purpose when it comes to interfaces, especially if you're just starting out. Up next is a 1/4-inch cable. You have a different one that you're gonna wanna use for guitars, and then a 1/4-inch cable that will be different to be used for like speakers or monitors. Again, you might not need all of these details, but I'll leave some links below that'll help you really nerd out if these are things that you need to be able to understand the distinctions of right now. When you get into microphones, there are a ton of different kinds to track your vocals with. There's dynamic and condenser, which are 2 of the main ones that you'll typically hear in the beginner to intermediate and even advanced stages of vocal production. A dynamic microphone might be used for a live studio setting or a studio where you're not about to build out a whole room just for vocal tracking. It is going to give you a bit more of a, I feel like, a specific sound, and it's not going to gather everything in the room around it. Whereas a condenser microphone is going to give you a much more realistic sound. I think that you should only use a condenser mic if you're really going to build out a treated room to be able to track with a condenser mic. There's also like a large condenser mic and a ribbon mic, but we'll get into those in another video. A pop filter looks like a cross between a spatula and a like cheese grater. It's usually a small circle thing that goes between your mouth, mouth, yes, that's called a mouth, and a microphone. I was getting the words confused. And it'll help with the p and b different sounds. Pop filter, it just helps kind of filter stuff. You need to know the difference between a straight stand and a boom stand. A straight stand goes straight up. A boom stand usually on a tripod base, which means it has 3 legs. Tripod, 3. A boom stand is one that goes up and then it goes over. I always use a boom because I play guitar, and it's nearly impossible and physically uncomfortable to try to hold a jumbo acoustic guitar with a straight microphone stand. It's doable, but it's really uncomfortable and doesn't always give a good sound. A boom microphone stand is preferred on my end, and it's the one that goes DAW, digital audio workstation. RCA cables are not crazy popular these days, but it's those red, yellow, white ones that we used to use for our DVD players and VHS players, and sometimes for live streaming, especially if you're using an iRig for your phone. An XLR cable is what's used to take a microphone into an interface or a microphone into a mixer. It has 2 different sides, male and female. You might often get them mixed up if you're just trying to plug it in without looking at it, but if you look at them or even feel them, you'll be able to tell that they are 2 different sides. One is for input and one is for output. Aux, like auxiliary cable, like that tiny little 3.5 millimeter cord that you use in the car that used to be connected to a tape deck back in my day. But you use it in the car to be like, oh my gosh, let me play some cool music. Well, now we don't, because not all our phones don't. You know what an aux is. Mono means 1, stereo means 2. A mixer can also be an interface, but interfaces aren't always mixers. A mixer, very specifically, is the square or rectangle with lots of different controls. If you are a churchgoer, take a peek at the sound booth, you will see a mixer, probably a Behringer X32, 34, I don't know which number. That's like my favorite mixer ever. Anyways, mixers are awesome, and they're really great for live, also great for drummers or anybody else that's using multiple inputs at a time. Effects, like literally FX, those are oftentimes going to be in your mixer. You might even see some plugins called effects, and it's going to help you with things like echo, reverb, or things like that. And a mix is not the same as a mixer. A mix can mean a lot of different things, like, hey, did you get the mix of this song? Or can you mix this vocal down so it doesn't sound so trebly or whatever. It's used interchangeably in a lot of different ways. Master is the final step of the song before it is sent out into the world. I am not great at mastering songs. I've done it because out of obligation and budget. I also don't prefer to mix my own songs. I produce them, but I don't prefer to do the final mix, even though I have before because of budget and other things like that. And I don't mind that. It is what it is, guys. We're all just cool kids here trying to do cool stuff. And also, master can be used to say like, oh, I own the masters of my 3rd studio album. It means like the final of a song. the final of it. Go on Google. I'll never forget writing with producers and writers in a different genre that I was not used to, and they called everything a section, whereas in another genre that I was predominantly writing in, people called it the verse and the chorus, and then another genre, people called it the hook. So just get familiar with words like hook, section. Hook usually means chorus. Section could mean verse, bridge, chorus. Depending on the genre, depending on even like the region of the country or the world that you're working in, people can use these terms interchangeably. But the first time I heard someone say section to reference a bridge, I was like, oh, that it made sense, but it was still like, whoa, I've never heard it used in that way before. The word loop can also mean more than one thing. So loop can be to repeat the same thing over and over again, like a loop pedal. But you can also hear the word loop in sampling. So if you go to a typical website like Splice that you use to download samples to make beats or make different production sounds, right? You'll see something called a one shot, which might just be right? A snap, just one time, doesn't repeat itself. But you can also see a sample called a loop, which is a drum beat on loop, a guitar part on loop. So it is and isn't the same thing, but it's just kind of wild because it's like the same word, has the same foundation, but can be used in different ways. In the same way that some producers will say, hey, let's double your vocal. And what they really mean is for you to sing the same thing 43 times. And then they'll have your vocal 7 times in a row because they picked the best 7 out of those 43 takes that you did. So they might say double. And sure, it is a double, but it's a double and then another set of doubles and then another set of doubles. Vocal producers call this stacking as well. So it's just crazy because like regionally and genre wise, people use a lot of the same terms to mean totally different things. So it's good to kind of familiarize yourself with as much as you can. A comp or a comped vocal is essentially taking the best parts of every little part of one vocal and creating one great vocal from 5 or 6 good or really good vocals. I used to think that all vocalists just went in the studio, and guitar players and piano players went in the studio, tracked their part, and then you're done. You did it. Sometimes that does work. I have some songs where like 90% of it is just one take or one vocal, but a lot of times you're comping the vocals. So you might say, this roof keeps me dry, and this roof is from the first track. Keeps me dry is from the second take. It's hard to really explain. Let me guys know in the comments, guys, if you'd like for me to do like a full video on like what it's like for me tracking and comping a vocal top to bottom. Speaking of track, a lot of people will use the word track, like, hey, go track your vocal, or can you track this instrument? But also the word track is used in most DAWs to explain the actual like physical track of something recorded. And then in like old school Southern people, sometimes Black people, the track is like the song as a whole. Like, play me that instrumental track, you got it, this, and that. So it can mean multiple things. I guess I'm just well-traveled and well-read. I'm a friend / artist is someone that's going to show up and then get 33%. So I'm going to do a whole video on co-writing, don't worry. But a lot of times people will be like, I have a friend that wants to come by the studio. I know a guy that's an artist, and they'll kind of like show up, and then before you know it, that person is a part of the songwriting session. That doesn't have to happen. That shouldn't always happen. That's one of the main reasons why I'm starting this and doing this, because that happens to women a lot. Guys shouldn't just be able to show up and just be like, I'm gonna change the third word. Let me hush. Velocity is the intensity or lack thereof in which you are playing the instrument. If you look at my last episode of the audio where I talked through all of the different, ways to kind of explore GarageBand, you'll see that we played the piano and then adjusted the velocity, specifically using the MIDI notes that we created. MIDI, M-I-D-I, is a really cool abbreviation for something that you could Google. And it basically it's the notes that you create using using a virtual instrument or even your voice. Bouncing is like another term for exporting or saving. You can bounce something to an MP3, bounce it as a WAV file. Sometimes producers or mixers, like producers that are mixing a song for you, an engineer that's mixing a song for you, they might say, can you bounce this in a this file or in a that file? Because it would be much easier for them to do their job if it's bounced to a certain format. Speaking of, organization is key, especially when you are working with other people and you want to make sure that you know about something called stems. Now, stems are basically all the files from your song, but organized in a way that makes it easier for other people to access them and do their job. So if you have 7 different guitar parts, you'll bounce all that out as the guitar stems, or you might bounce half of them out as the acoustic guitar stems and half of them out as the electric guitar stems. So then when you bounce the song out, if it originally had 20 or 30 or 40 tracks in Logic, now it's 7 or 8 files that are then called stems. Feedback is that mad, annoying, whistling, piercing sound that happens when your microphone is like mad, like way too close to the speaker or something like that where the sound is coming from, and then well, yeah, that. And pan is when you send something all the way to the left, all the way to the right, keep it right in the middle, which is the standard place for the pan knob to be in most DAWs. I hope this was helpful. I would love to do more videos like this in the future. If there's anything else that you guys would like for me to explain or would like for me to explain quicker, kind of like I did today, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and if you love what you see, please join me on Patreon for only $3 or $7 a month. It helps to support me. Hi, Jamie Grace, host of the audio and the person of this YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for the love and support. Really appreciate you. Thanks for streaming my new songs, Washington, and keep going. Like, it means the world to me. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Have an awesome weekend. Okay, bye.